Design challenge is the most dreaded UX job interview type. And in today's video, we are going to discuss how to deal with them and how can you successfully pass them. My name is Ines, I'm a principal product designer and a hiring manager with 15 years of experience, and this is already the fourth video on this topic about the job interviews for UX designers. If you've missed the previous videos, go and check them on my YouTube channel. And today's video is going to be pretty long and deep, so buckle up and let's go. In the first video of this mini-series, I was already talking about why companies are giving designers design challenges to start with, why your UX portfolio is not enough. I'm not going to repeat the whole video there, but just in a general sense, companies want to check how do you deal with the challenges without anyone's help. Because even if you had a real-world experience, you were working on a team and you might have had design leads there or senior PMs who might navigate your effort in UX design. But when you are given a challenge to deal on spot, we can definitely say what is the level of your user UX design skills. And first, it is important to mention that there are two types of design challenges: the take-home design challenge and the on-site design challenge. And the difference is, how it is obvious from the name, is one you take home and you can make it over the weekend, for example, and one of them you are required to solve during like 60 minutes, 90 minutes interview. But in the nutshell, they are actually not that drastically different because they are testing your mindset and your design approach. It's only that in the take-home design challenge, you have more time to realize your proposal. So let's discuss them both and let's start with the on-site design challenge. This challenge can go by different names. It could be called a whiteboard challenge, design exercise, and all other sorts of names. But all of them will require from you to take a challenge and to solve them during the course of the interview. There are actually different types of challenges that you might receive. The first type is a classical whiteboard challenge, and no worries, I'm going to explain to you what it means in just a moment. The second type is a reduced or shortened type of design challenge, and the third type is the app critique. So let's start with the classical one because it is also a very well-known format, and by explaining you how this format works, you will also understand how other challenges might be structured, because they are most of the time are deviations from this classical whiteboard challenge. So let's go. The classical whiteboard challenge is when you have one more person in the room, maybe sometimes two people, and you are given the design challenge to work on for the next 60-90 minutes. And what makes whiteboard challenge really unique and interesting is that you have these people with you whom you can interact with. And it is actually expected you will be interacting with, but only you need to understand on which grounds. The best way to think about this challenge and to approach it is by thinking it is like a brainstorming session you would have with your colleagues at work. Imagine that you have just got a problem that is coming to your pipeline and you have the first initial conversation with your colleagues about how you might probably solve this challenge. And the example of this challenge could sound something like, our company would want to expand their operations to China. How would you suggest us to navigate the product to the Chinese market? And because you are given only 60-90 minutes to work on the problem, you are not expected to execute on it. And talking about how would you collaborate with your peers on the call is that it is not expected that they know the answers. There is also no one right answer how a product could be launched to the Chinese market. So it is important for them just to see and observe your thinking process and to assess the breadth of your knowledge. And no, you don't really need to be an expert on launching products in China unless this is the job posting. Very general sense of UX design would apply here as well. Your interviewers would be interested to know what questions will you be answering and what options will you be suggesting and how can you narrow down to one option. And this is it. Many people, unfortunately, they do not understand the essence of the challenge. And the first mistake many people do is that they start interacting with interviewers as if I know all the right answers, and they ask questions in order for me to answer them so they can move forward. For example, they ask how many people we have on a team, or does company have a translator, something like that. And I don't know, like, it's the challenge. It's not that we are really launching on the Chinese market tomorrow. I want you to suggest, will we need a translator? Would you recommend it? Or would you recommend to get by with a ChatGPT, for example? You don't really need to know all the answers and all the details to be able to just discuss the possible approaches. And also, because it is called the whiteboard challenge, it is expected that you use at least one tool to navigate your thinking process. And it could be really anything, even the Google Doc will do, provided that it really is your natural tool for sketching and ideation. So think about it upfront. How will you structure the setup? Will you be showing them that you are writing something down on a piece of paper, or you will be sharing a screen and you will be maybe creating a mind map there? And unfortunately, if you really are not thinking about this setup upfront, it could really prevent you from passing this interview, because you will pick a tool that will not be the tool of your first choice, and the whole setup will look messy. You will start getting nervous. I've seen it multiple times. So I really recommend you having even multiple tools open and be ready to share the screen depending on the challenge that you receive. Also, some companies, they specify what tool they expect you to use. It's not very often, but I must say Zalando did it at some point in time. When I was interviewing for Zalando, I got the whiteboard challenge where I was allowed to only use a piece of paper. I actually made a video about how I landed the UX job at Zalando. I recommend you to watch it. I give you the example of the challenge that they gave me and how I passed it. But let's get back to our topic and let's discuss how else can you prepare. The second type of preparation that I highly recommend you to think about is to learn as much as possible about the industry you are applying to. At least you need to know the main competitors and how their products are different from the product you are applying to. Because I many times have been on the situation where I was interviewing people for Zalando and they could not name me our competitors. We are a fashion marketplace. Please at least say that you know Zara. And this is the real story, and more often it's not enough just to name Zara and move on. It's important to mention what exactly at Zara you would bring into my attention. Realize the following, that many people who are applying to the same job simultaneously, they already have the relevant experience. Maybe they were working in a marketplace as a marketplace manager or even like a salesperson, but they already know more about the industry than you do if you don't have the relevant experience, and you better plan some actions in order to reach this comparison or even stand out. The second type of preparation you can do is that you can study users. For most companies, there are loads of information available about the users. But even for small companies, you can at least read some Reddit blogs or maybe some feedback from users on the App Store, because you would want to have a picture of who are they in general. Are they older? Are they younger? Are they students? Because that will give you many ideas about their potential needs. And then you will use those needs to structure your design challenge. And with that being said, let's discuss how you can tactically structure your answer in order to pass the design challenge interview. So first, when you receive the challenge, make sure you understand what is being asked. There is nothing wrong if you ask to read the challenge for the second time. It is absolutely allowed. It's better you do that than solving a challenge that doesn't make sense. And believe me, it sounds very obvious when you are watching this video, but when you will be on an interview, the stress will come out. And talking here deeply from my experience of being an interviewer, and also as a person who has a course about job interviews for UX designers, the link will be down below, of course, I can tell you there is guaranteed at least one person in the cohort, we have 10 people, who will at least once solving the challenge, that I did not ask for. So really, this is very, very common. This is purely because this situation of job interviews, it's unnatural for many people. So please take it into account. So don't forget to ask to read the challenge for the second time. You will not look dumb. You will actually look as a person who is thoughtful, who wants to make sure they solve the right challenge to start with. The second thing you need to do is that you need to give yourself time. Many people I interviewed, they rush to the answers. But the answers are coming out to be not structured, not well thought through, and I would be wishing they had taken a minute to think about in silence. So really take this advice seriously, or even write a post-it. It's not that critical as if you would be solving a challenge that I did not say, but it is still really something that can make the difference. Then a really good tip for you is to start thinking from users, not from business, not from the product. Make sure you will include that as well in your answer. But if you will start with users and their needs, then you will come across as the person who knows why UX designers are doing this job in companies, because they advocate for users, they care about user experience, and they are responsible for matching business objectives with user needs. And here, your previous research about users will come in handy, because you can show that you have come prepared, that you know the company well, that you have done your homework. And this is already providing a really, really nice first impression. So you start thinking about users and start listing down their needs. If there are multiple groups of users, you mention them all. Then the next thing that you need to do is that you need to get back to the challenge and match the challenge with their needs. And please do this in the brainstorming mode, because there are always multiple ways how you can solve a challenge. If you will only give me one idea about how the challenge could be solved, you will not look as a person who research and explore enough. Then, after you listed down all the needs that users might have, think about what else you need to know about the users. Sometimes you know a lot because you used to be working with these people, or you used to be a student yourself, so you can relate. Sometimes if you are working on a challenge for a B2B company, you know very little and you cannot suggest almost anything. And it is okay, don't be stressed about that. Just continue talking about possible research that you might need on this project. And here, when you are talking about research, it's really nice when you can demonstrate that you care about the team resources. Because even in the biggest companies like Amazon, the resources are limited. And it is important that you at least demonstrate that you know that some research methods are more expensive than others. It is actually so important that on my course, Job Interviews for UX Designers, we have the whole workshop as a bonus to discuss exactly that. So to lay down all the research methods that are there and to match them against the time and resources and how it is all coming together. From what I learned in previous cohorts of this course, it's not that easy, but most people, they actually have this understanding already, at least in a general sense. I mean, it is very clear that if you do an internet research about your competitors, it is way cheaper than conducting interviews with users. And this is already quite good because, believe it or not, but many people, they just dump all the research methods that they know and that can theoretically fit the challenge without any indication that some research method is more expensive than others and that it might not fit the challenge because the challenge might be really small and so on. It forces me to ask clarification questions, and I can of course do that. It's not a mistake, but I would prefer you demonstrate this awareness already, because really a lot of conversations in companies are revolving around resources and money and time. And I would really prefer to hire a designer, even if it is a junior, who cares about these topics. Then after you have the user groups and their needs, and you have listed down some questions that you might want to find out through research, and you have suggested the research that you would go for, you should start talking about the company structure itself and what it will presumably take for you to launch this project within the company. Let me explain. If you are applying to a startup, you might expect that they have not so many processes in place that you need to be compliant with. At the same time, for the same job in a big tech company, you will need to demonstrate that you know that there are going to be some frictions. And by frictions, I mean that you need to know your stakeholders, you need to keep them informed, you need to ensure that you have enough alignments with them, and this will all result in prolonging the time it will take you to deliver the project. If I would be hiring for a startup, I would probably not be that interested in this part. But for a big tech company, this is where I would make sure I pause and we talk about this in depth. Because I really don't want to hire a person who then will find out on the second day working in my team that we have multiple levels of sign-offs and a lot of alignments and a lot of emails, and the complexity is enormous. And then it most likely will lead to people being unsatisfied and even surprised or shocked. And I will be also unpleasantly surprised because I was expecting that the person would know that, but it is really a nice place during the design challenge when we can find this out. So what you can do is that you can do some preliminary research about the company and their structure. At least you need to find out how many people are employed there. And also there is of course a spectrum of complexity, so you need to do an educated guess about where this company is most likely placed. The best way for me to do that is to read what former employees are writing down about this company on the internet. But this can actually demotivate you because usually people who leave feedback, they are dissatisfied. And I recommend you to be mindful about that. Don't be discouraged about the reviews right away. All the time I read company reviews being scared to join the company. It turns out everything was okay. Everything was like everywhere else. But this level of research will really help you estimate what is the level of complexity you might be dealing with. Getting back to the answering structure, there is one more component you need to ensure in your answer, and this component is suggesting multiple options. If we are talking about the challenge, how a company can launch on the Chinese market, you might be able to suggest some ideas like maybe we can launch an MVP first and then see how it flies, and this is what can this MVP has in it. Or maybe you can say we will do the full-scale research and then we will adapt the whole application altogether because there is no sense in launching an MVP. There are a lot of potential competitors that already do this job. Or maybe some other idea would be that you will buy a product within the Chinese market already. So this is where you are expected to do also some sketching, to go really, really wild. But make sure that in the end, you mention which option you think is more feasible. And you decide that based on the questions that you asked before that, based on your understanding of the resources, of the constraints, and so on. So it might sound complex, but it is really not. It is a simple structure and it is pretty logical. I already have 2 videos on this channel about how people can pass the whiteboard challenge. One interview is where I think the person would pass this interview with me, the other where I think that the person will unfortunately fail. I have my comments at the end of each video about why I think they passed or did not pass, so I recommend you to watch it to have it all in place. But really, the answering structure is not that complex. Start by talking about the users and their needs, then ensure that you list down the potential questions that you might have for the research and talk about which research type or research types would be the best fit for this particular problem. Then ensure that you talk about the internal alignments, constraints, what would be needed, maybe include there some technical considerations. This is actually also very important. Then talk about some potential solutions and make sure that you list down at least 3 solutions, and this is where I expect you to sketch something. Then make sure you choose one solution or recommended solution in your opinion based on the information that you have on users and the technical constraints. I also wanted to talk about 2 major mistakes that people do. And the first mistake is that they rush into sketching. And yes, it is called the whiteboard challenge, but many people, they take it literally, and without asking me any questions, without listing down some potential ideas, they start into sketching and they start suggesting me things right away, and they come across as people who are maybe jumping into assumptions without really investigating the details. The second mistake I mentioned already is treating the interviewer as the person who knows all the right answers. On the practice, it looks like a person is asking, how many people we have on a team? I don't know, like suggest me how many people would you need for the project like that? Or how much time do we have for this project? And I don't know already if that is not in the challenge. I also don't know that. Like suggest me what would be the best time frame for the project like that. Also, it depends on the solution that we will discuss at the end. So it does not make sense to ask this even before we start discussing the solutions. So make sure you understand the problem first. When a person does this, I'm always wondering if they are going to do the same at work, meaning they are only going to take on projects where they are given all the answers and they need a really clear direction to do their work. It's not something that I want most of the time, because UX design is when you deal with a lot of unknowns, and this is your job to clarify those unknowns. So I do not recommend doing that. Really think about more of a co-creation. Assume that the person within the room, they also don't know any answers, and you are there together and you are collaborating on the project. Now, that was a long explanation, but it really helps me to lay down the foundation for talking about the rest of the challenges, because they are really quite the same. By the way, if you like this video and you want to receive more videos like that, then give me thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below. It's important for me and for YouTube algorithms. And we're moving on. Let's talk about the shortened version of the whiteboard challenge. The requirements from this challenge and the types of design challenges that you might be given are completely the same as with the classical whiteboard challenge. But the only difference is in the structure of the call. In the beginning of the call, you are given a task to work with, then an interviewer leaves the room, and you have 30 minutes to work on the challenge yourself. You gather all your ideas, you basically go through the same structure that we have just discussed, starting with user needs. And then after 30 minutes are over, interviewer gets back and you discuss your ideas. I think it is clear why companies are leaning on towards this type of challenge right now, because it saves a lot of time for interviewers and hiring managers. So you can expect to encounter this interview type a lot. It is getting so much popularity that I even included it in the new cohort of my course, Job Interviews for UX Designers, as a separate workshop. Previously, we only had one workshop about the whiteboard challenges and that's it. Now we have 2 workshops, and I also did it so people could try different approaches and to feel the difference. Because the only thing that will change for you is the way how you can brainstorm all those ideas. Spoiler alert, you can use ChatGPT. It is absolutely allowed. We cannot even control that. And it is not the goal, because in the real life, you will be definitely using the models. Those are the same tools as Google, for example, or internet. So why not use them all? So it is completely fine if you open ChatGPT and you start brainstorming with it right away. And this is also what I did personally when I went through this design challenge myself. It is actually very nice to know that you have a tool that can always help you to structure your answer, that can brainstorm with you, and that you can use these results right away on the design challenge. The only thing that you need to be careful there is to really assess critically the answers that ChatGPT gives you. Because yes, ChatGPT can give a lot of ideas to start with, but then eventually it's your responsibility to adapt those ideas to this particular challenge and this particular conversation. And it is also very important how you will structure your storytelling once you have gotten all the answers from ChatGPT. Also, on this type of interview, we usually ask you way more questions because we know that you've been using ChatGPT and it is okay, but we want to hear how you freely talk about the answers. So expect a bit more interactivity on the second part of the challenge. It will not be like on the classical whiteboard challenge when you will be, like doing most of the talking alone. Here we will always interrupt you and make sure we ask questions and clarifications and things like that to ensure that you understand what you are talking about. Let's talk about one standalone design challenge that is called app critique. What do we mean by app critique? Is literally when your interviewer asks you to open a random application from your phone and to critique it. I must say, I don't really like the design challenge of that sort because it is not realistic. Nowhere in your actual job you will be asked to perform the task like that. But some companies, they use that. Meta, for example, that's why I have included this challenge in this video, and it is also included in my course Job Interviews for UX Designers. So what is being tested here? An interviewer wants to see how well do you understand the status quo and how can you challenge it. And on top of that, it is also obvious how well can you understand the trends and how do you deliver feedback itself. How can you prepare to the challenge like that is by two ways. First is delete apps that you are not familiar with. It is absolutely allowed, but just don't look weird. It's definitely not going to look realistic if you open your iPhone and then you have there 5 applications. So make sure you are not overdoing it. The second way how you can prepare that is by practicing it on videos, because you usually have the limited number of applications that could be called out. So you can actually, in theory, think about them all and record everything on the video and really improve how you deliver feedback. And this is actually also why I personally don't really like the challenge like that, because it could be easily tricked and because you are never doing this type of work in your day-to-day life of a UX designer. But anyways, there is also an answering structure that I recommend, and surprise, surprise, it is almost the same as with the whiteboard challenge. So first you start talking about users and their needs. So who are they? Why are they using this app? And don't afraid to sound obvious here, because really it is important how you understand and perceive users. For example, if you are asked to critique Facebook, then it is important, how do you see it? Who are the users? Are they in the 50s? Or do you think that maybe companies are using Facebook mostly? Or which angle do you take? Then talk about global trends, like where this whole industry is directing, what is the future of the Facebook, how you understand it, and then brainstorm different ideas of how this application can develop in the future. Then, if you are completely stuck with the app, there is another approach that you can take. It is by starting talking about your own experience. And here, don't be even afraid if your experience is limited, because you can talk exactly about why it is limited and what the application might do to increase it. And don't forget to talk about users, maybe compare yourself with the main user, talk about some technical constraints and limitations, why they are not enabling you to use the app more, for example, and things like that. This interview challenge type is luckily not that popular, so chances that you will come across it like very little, but I still have the whole workshop on the Job Interviews course for UX designers, because it is important just to practice an ad hoc feedback giving. Because a variation of this challenge for leads, for example, is when you are asked to provide ad hoc challenge for someone else's designs. But we're not going to cover this here, because most of you are not probably applying for leads positions, and maybe my videos on this channel, they are not relevant for you even. But my hope is that if you get the practical knowledge on how to give ad hoc feedback about an app, it will make it easier for you to also give ad hoc feedback for designers. By the way, the link on my course Job Interviews for UX Designers is down below. Check it out. We will have one cohort in 2025. If you've missed this cohort, then join the waitlist and you will get the information if we have more. Now let's get back to the beginning of our video. Maybe you remember that we were talking that there are 2 types of the design challenges: the take-home design challenge and the on-site design challenge. So far, we've been only covering the on-site design challenges. the challenges that you are supposed to do in the 60-minute, 90-minute time slot. Now let's talk about the take-home design challenge. The take-home design challenge is still very, very popular. And it is not always bad if you are given a design challenge like that. Because actually, the design challenge that you are supposed to do on site is way more stressful. And for senior UX designers and also for people who are better in storytelling, it is more beneficial to have an on-site design challenge. But if you are just starting out, your design knowledge is still very fresh. And you might not have the right answer right away on the spot. But most people, if they are given the longer period of time to do the challenge, they are able to give a better answer. Because you have ChatGPT, your mentors all on your side. So in some cases, consider it to be an advantage if you have given a take-home design challenge and not an on-site design challenge. But of course, take-home design challenges, they are easier to do if you have no kids, no commitments, maybe if you are in your 20s. So it's also like not very fair for some groups of people to give a take-home design challenge. And here's a tip for you: if you really feel that you cannot make a take-home design challenge, ask if they have an alternative. You will be surprised that some companies really have this alternative. They just have a preferred way, but if you have some exceptions, you can maybe qualify for an on-site design challenge. But now let's talk about how you can pass the take-home design challenge. It is important to know that there are same things that are being tested. The same as with the whiteboard challenge, we are interested to know how well do you understand the users, the trends, the constraints that you might encounter, and what options would you suggest to us, and which option would you see as the most feasible. And the only difference technically is that at the end you also have the opportunity to realize this one version that you suggest. And this whole idea of suggesting multiple versions is very much overlooked by many people. So often I see that people are rushing designing. Same as with the whiteboard challenge exercise. They are rushing to sketching, to executing, and it's not always good. Almost always it is expected that you make a pause and you think about and you research the problem. And we are not expecting that you will go and do the full-scale research. Let's take the design challenge example that I'm sticking to throughout the video. What if the company wants to launch on the Chinese market? And imagine that you've got it as a take-home design challenge. So this will be highly unfair, even if it is possible, for you to go and do research about the Chinese market. And one more time, we're not expecting you to. We are expecting you to list down possible questions that you might have for research and options of how you would go with which type of research for which situation. And then, because we are not waiting that you will do this research, we are expecting that you can at least note down a couple of options that could be made for this project. And then you might take your best guess, your best option, and realize it in the designs, if that is required. Sometimes it is not even required that you will produce final results. So in my opinion, actually, on-site challenges and take-home challenges, they are not drastically different. For you to be safe though, with the take-home design challenges, I recommend you always asking about the company's expectations. What do they want to see as the final result? Do they expect you to create the final designs, or they want just to see a couple of mock-ups and that's it? Usually it is very well specified in the design assignment anyway, but if they fail to do so, then ask proactively what do they expect and what time commitment do they recommend you to have. Actually, as I am a person myself who was coming up with the design challenges for my previous employer, I can tell you that we are actually interested in specifying you the time frame and the efforts required, because otherwise it is really hard to compare. Imagine that you get two design challenges and one person is in the 20s, they have no kids, no animals, nothing, and they were able to spend, I don't know, like 40 hours throughout the week on the challenge alone. And then there is another person who has the day job, who has kids, who has a dog, and this person might be even a better designer, but just because they cannot spend 40 hours, the design challenge will not be comparable. And this is what we want to avoid, so don't be afraid to ask. I wanted to close this video by saying that the best strategy for preparing to a design challenge is to ask upfront about what is required. Even if they are not sending you anything, it is allowed for you to ask proactively about some guidance and best tips that you could use for preparing to the challenge. I often see when people are not doing this and they come with their expectations unmanaged, they don't have a tool prepared, they are not understanding what the challenge is about, and they treat the challenge as a guess game where they need to find the right answer and only me there who is knowing this answer. This is not correct, and this is not how this challenge is organized. And the other best practice I wanted to share with you is to approach any design challenge as the fun exercise. Just try not to be stressed about it. Think about this challenge as a brainstorming session at work or as a fun challenge from your bootcamp, and I'm sure you will name all the right things because it is really not that complex. And we also want to set you to success as hiring managers and interviewers, believe me, but there are still some requirements that you need to fulfill and checkboxes that you need to tick. I hope this video was helpful, and now you know how to pass the design challenge stage, being it a take-home design challenge or an on-site interview. And if you are interested in my course Job Interviews for UX Designers, then check out the link in the video description and see if we have a cohort open. There we will practice design challenges 3 times, whiteboard challenge, shortened version, and the app critique, so it's going to be very fun and intensive. And if you like this video and you want to master interviews, then hit the subscribe button down below and click the bell. This way you will get a notification when a new video comes out. And I see you next time.